Hey folks, it's Ian with 3CF, and I am bringing you on a brief look at my new recipe for substrate blocks. Now, it's late January 2021. It's been cold outside for upwards of 2 weeks now, and I haven't really done any substrate growing or cooking in a while, and I'm getting really antsy. So I decided to retrofit my preparation room to my preparation and also cooking room. Let's hope I don't burn the house down. Alright, today I am switching up the things, or I'm switching up the recipe a bit from what I initially used. If you watch my first video regarding my substrate recipe preparation and cooking and all that stuff, the big ingredients I had were alfalfa, sawdust, cottonseed meal, plaster of Paris, some water of course, and lastly, a little bit of coffee. I'm modifying that recipe a little bit using actually a conglomerate of a couple recipes. Paul Stamets standard nutrient supplemented sawdust recipe, and I'm adding an extra little zing to this recipe, which is black oil sunflower seeds, which I've actually already added into my mixer here. Yeah, that right there is black oil sunflower seeds, and I'm letting them soak a little bit. As if you've ever seen sunflower seeds before, they have that hard outer shell. I want to let them soak for a little while before I get a chance to mix them up. That way they might be able to more easily break down. I will also add in my regular sawdust pellets. And instead of using cottonseed meal, which is what I used in the past, the price of cottonseed meal has gone up quite a bit. So I'm using Wheat Bran. These bags, I believe they're both 40 pounds a pop, and when I purchased them, they were much cheaper relative. I mean, I'm pretty sure that I got 80 pounds for the cost of 40 pounds of the cottonseed. So, you know, when in Rome, if it's, well, not when in Rome, but if it's cheaper, let's try it out. Of course, I will be adding plaster of Paris. I do have water already in there. Now, whenever I was doing the water add-on, as I said in previous videos, I've got a pretty good handle on it. I would add 4.5 gallons of water to my overall recipe. That would create 10 6.5 pound substrate blocks. I've gone ahead and reduced the water by 1/4 of a gallon, so it's 4 1/4 gallon of water in there. Just because I was noticing on some of the blocks in the spawning room, we're kicking out that yellow liquid material that's basically like an antibiotic that the substrate kicks out. Sorry, not the substrate. The mycelium kicks out whenever it's trying to fight any potential foreign bacteria or whatever have you. So I'm going to bring down the moisture a little bit, see what that does. Yeah, so I'm not going to be too long on this one. I'm going to go ahead and mix everything together, and well, of course, I will post the entire ingredient list, what I have, in the comments section or in the detail section of this video, and I'll show you, how it turned out. Thanks for watching. Maybe. Bye. Alrighty, folks. Quick update, and I should point out before I go any further that I've had a frog in my throat for much of the evening, so if I'm clearing my throat consistently, I do apologize for that. Now, I, of course, you can see, am going through the sterilization process of the new ingredient substrate blocks that I put together, and I didn't bother making videos of the preparation of the substrate blocks or filling them up into the autoclavical bags or putting them into the sterilizers. I made a previous video of that, so if you want, you can find that. But I did want to kind of give you an overview about what I've learned so far. Now, I was able to create 10 substrate blocks using my recipe, and all of them except for one are around 6.5 pounds. Now, one of them is just under 6 pounds, and my prediction as to why that occurred is basically due to the sunflower seeds themselves. Unlike their counterpart, the first recipe had alfalfa, which when thrown in with water will absorb the water, its volume increases, its weight increases. The sunflower seeds, that doesn't occur. They basically just sit in water and get wet. I wasn't really able to break them apart or anything of that nature with my hands unless I had quite literally grabbed each seed and kind of tried to squeeze them. And I'm not going to do that for 8 pounds of seeds. So as a result, each bag is basically just kind of your regular substrate bag with little black dots kind of fixed in there, just kind of spread amongst the substrate block. This might be a bad thing. It might be a good thing. It might be that when the mycelium is inoculating the substrate block, it'll hit one of these little sunflower seeds, and then it's just a burst of nutrients, and it loves it. The alternative is where it's just too much nutrients at one go, and it causes the mycelium to kind of react in an unfavorable way. And it's a possibility. It truly is. That's why you really want to kind of, fully mix your substrate blocks together. You don't want to have it layered. Definitely don't want to do that. But we'll see. If it turns out that is a problem, there was a YouTube user that recommended that I look at getting a paint mixer that you can maybe attach to a hand drill. And if I find that the method I'm doing right now for mixing up the substrate is just not effective, I'll go get that paint mixer and see if that doesn't better incorporate the seeds into the substrate blocks themselves. So time will tell. Let's see here. As I mentioned in the first part of this video, I went ahead and transferred all my cooking tools. You can see the propane cookers into my preparation room. I am not in the barn. The reason being is because when I started this around 7:30 at night, it was around 26 degrees Fahrenheit outside with a good wind going on. And I've been sitting here for about an hour, 45 minutes, and I can tell you right now the temperature has dropped. Yeah, my small cooker is acting up a little bit too. But yeah, the temperature has dropped. Wait. Got all night. Yep. Another reason that you might want to just look in getting sterilizers to do this instead of getting a good old-fashioned pressure cooker, because you don't have to hear that noise all the time. But anyway, it's too cold outside, and that chilliness out there is not really felt in here quite as badly as I know it would be felt inside the barn. If I was doing this inside the barn, I would have given up just because of the temperature would be freezing, and I'd be freezing my ass off. Not to mention the damage it could potentially doing to my sterilizers long term. I really don't like the idea of them trying to cook at 250 degrees inside a room that's like 36 degrees Fahrenheit. That just doesn't sound right. I mean, people don't cook steaks inside their walk-in freezers. Also, you can notice that I do have the door over here opened slightly, and I have a fan right there to allow good airflow so that the propane cookers, the fumes don't permeate inside the house. You really don't want that. They can be nauseating. They can lead to some unintended consequences that you just don't really want to have to deal with in the first place. So if you're doing this and you have no real good outdoor conditions to do it because the temperatures are just really inhospitable, or the climate is really inhospitable, this is a good alternative. So think of your garage, where you can kind of keep the garage door ajar, keep the area somewhat warm, keep yourself somewhat warm while you're watching this going through. You definitely don't want to be doing this inside your kitchen or inside your living room. Don't do it. So yeah, that's that. My next steps, of course, is I'm going to let these cool off, and then I'm going to inoculate the bags with two different types of grain spawn. I'm going to do king oyster and lion's mane. I've got a little bit of grain spawn left over for both from a previous purchase. I'm going to inoculate that, see how both of those strains work with this new recipe, and I'll probably videotape a little bit about that video, because I've got a little bit of different things that I've done. Not to mention, I don't think I've actually ever shown you in a video of that before. So we'll do that, and then as time goes on, we'll see if this recipe works out better. I truly hope it does. But yeah, stay tuned. Alright, it's been almost 24 hours since I stopped cooking or sterilizing my substrate blocks, and I'm going ahead and getting them basically taken out of the cookers now. Now, the way I do this is not ideal, but again, I'm working with limited space. I'm working with limited capabilities overall. So in an ideal circumstance, when you're doing this, when you're taking, when you open up these autoclaves or the sterilizers that you use for preparing the substrate or cooking the substrate, you really want to do it in front of laminar flow hood or something of that nature. I have a laminar flow hood, but it's 12 by 24, or yeah, it's the smallest model that you can pretty much get for a commercial sense, and so it doesn't really work well putting these in front because this one is, well, almost too big. That one is definitely too big. So I have an alternative that it kind of works. I haven't really noticed any major issues. So open this up if I can get it open. Yeah, we're good. And we will basically take these bags, and as quickly as possible, I'm going to pop them into my little Tupperware bins. I usually get 3 or 4 in a Tupperware bin. Before I actually do anything, I spray it down with isopropyl so I can kind of limit any kind of foreign bacteria from getting into the situation. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and load all these up, get them placed in the bins, and we'll go from there. So I went ahead and unloaded the 4 substrate bags that were cooking inside my smaller pressure cooker here. And before putting the lid on, I sprayed it down for isopropyl, and now everything's sitting in there. It's not, again, sealed perfectly, but the interior is completely sprayed down with isopropyl. My hoping is that I can get them transported to my lab setup and that they will not get contaminated within that time frame, or the contamination will be minimized as much as humanly possible. Now, I don't remember if I mentioned it clearly in the first part of these videos, but this cooker was being problematic pretty much from about 45 minutes into the process up until the very end. It was kicking out way too much water. I overfilled this a bit, and I mean, yeah, I'm going to have to retire this pretty soon because this has just been problematic. And I don't know if you can see it, but there's bits of substrate inside here because one of the bags ruptured. Basically what happened is that this happens sometimes where when it's going through depressurization or something else occurs where effectively the bags, they get pulled. The drop in pressure or something occurs that basically pulls at parts of the bags and then ruptures it. So one of the 4 bags inside there has actually been ruptured. Now I'm going to try to recover it using tape. Just kind of tape it with Gorilla Glue or Gorilla Tape or duct tape. It has worked before. We'll see if it works now. Sometimes you can get away with it, sometimes you don't. But, you know, given all the work that you did just to get these bags, I mean, it doesn't hurt to try. So I'm going to go ahead and unload my second sterilizer. Hopefully there's no issues with the substrate inside there, and then we'll carry on. Alright, I now have 10 substrate bags located throughout all these totes. Now, if you haven't noticed, I number each one, and the reason why I do that is to keep accountability of which bags came from which sterilizer. So I already know that 3 is the one that came from that little sumbitch, my little problem child, and so I have to keep a careful eye on that. 7, 8 came from the larger sterilizer, and there's actually 4 inside of here, 2 inside of here. Now also a point of reference I should make out, whenever you're taking anything out of these, it's ideal to really spray down your hands with isopropyl. I forgot. Been a long day. I have not been getting a good sleep schedule for a long time now, so I'm making silly mistakes. But even better if you can get yourself some little disposable gloves and then go ahead and isopropyl the gloves. I mean, you know, better safe than sorry. Once you open these things up, that's when you have to be very, very cognizant of the sterile environment that you're in. And so, you know, the better you can do that, then the less likely you have to worry about any foreign bacteria coming in. You have more robust substrate for the mycelium to colonize. The mycelium doesn't have to worry about any foreign competitors or anything like that. And, you know, the blocks will colonize faster, and you can get them into your grow room faster. All right, so I'm going to bring these over to my lab and we'll go from there. Okay, hopefully you can hear me. I got my vent hood on, and I also have a mask on to avoid contaminating anything, so apologies if it's a little bit muffled. I wanted to show you this real quick. Here is the bag that I mentioned ruptured. It was in my small my smaller pressure cooker. So what effectively happened is that this portion of the bag, when it was depressurizing, either from getting too cold too quickly or byproduct of the water, just too much water, I'm not exactly sure which, this pulled itself and the bag ruptured right here. You can feel that this portion of the bag is much weaker than the rest of the bag. I've seen this in videos beforehand. I've experienced it in the past. It can really screw up an entire bag. So the best thing that I can recommend if you have this situation happen to you is to retape this entire portion, any portion that feels weakened. Now, I've got it in the flow hood. I'm going to tape it. I'm going to put it back in the bin and then take a look at the other ones, and then I'll get back in touch with you. Alright, so it is time to inoculate the substrate blocks. I did a quick test on the surface temperature of all the blocks. None of them reached over 72 degrees, so if the internal temperature is a little bit higher, when it goes through the mixing process and everything, and when it sits in front of the laminar flow hood, it'll probably cool down. Now I have two different grain spawn that I'm going to use today to inoculate. King and lion's mane. There's about 2 pounds left over of the king. There's about 1.5 pounds left over of the lion's mane. What I'm essentially going to do is try to do about a half to a cup worth of grain spawn for each block. Now again, I'm going to only do 5 blocks per, so 5 blocks this, 5 blocks this. And what I typically do, and I know it's not the best, is I'll take one of these bags, open it up along the seam right underneath with shears or scissors that have been sprayed down with isopropyl, and then I'll basically kind of have the bag break up any clusters in here. And oh, by the way, when I pulled it out, I don't know if you can see that, that right there is a little dehydrated lion's mane mushroom that I was actually growing while this was sitting in the fridge. So I know that the grain spawn is still viable, at least from that showcasing, because I've never seen grain spawn pin in a refrigerator beforehand. So for that to occur, that gives me hope with at least this last batch before I just kind of lay off lion's mane for a bit. Anyway, cut this. This will only ever face the laminar flow hood, so we'll have sterile sheets of air constantly going in here. Probably not have to worry too much about sterility issues. And then the uninoculated bag will sit right here facing forward as well. I will take that little scoop, spray it down every single time I use it, wipe it out as well, transfer contents from in here into this, bring the bag from over here, place it right here, and get it sealed up. Now, ideally you really want to have this seal only occurring in front of a laminar flow hood, but when I first tried this out, I was always bringing this seal over here, and I mean, just the extra effort that required, not to mention the fact that I'm bringing it in front of other things, disrupting the sterile sheets of air. I mean, I could bring it over here, get it sealed in the space of 3 seconds, and it's probably going to be, well, it's going to be faster than what I was doing previously, but at least no more. I mean, it's not really going to have any bigger problems as far as, you know, contamination is concerned. It's not great, but it is what it is. And one of these days I hope to get ones that are just twice this height, and I can easily fill up this entire table and get a table that's actually more, that stands out more, so that I have better workspace and I'm not having to just shove tables together, because, you know, that lip right there is always a little bit concerning. So that's why whenever I have these open, they're in front of the lip. Anyway, I'm just going to go ahead and get everything sterilized, get everything inoculated, and then we'll come back. Quick update. So I've gotten all the bags. I got all the bags inoculated. Don't know where I picked up cotton. You learn something from yourself when you start listening to yourself. Anyway, getting back on topic. And a couple things to point out. It looks like the substrate actually doesn't look too bad, all things considered. Number one, I don't see as much of the sunflowers. Well, you can see it kind of protruding there, but I don't see it quite as pervasive as I was expecting initially. So maybe they did break down a little bit better. Interestingly enough, this recipe, wow, it's a little bit more chunky when I'm breaking these things up than my previous one, so maybe that'll just be a matter of fine-tuning it or just getting more used to it and everything. Two other things that I have changed up, not necessarily with the recipe, but in different regards. The first 100 bags that I purchased was from Field and Forest. I purchased from them back in the day, 2015, 2016, and they're pretty good. But the reality is that the size of the bags that I'm working with, the poundage and everything, they're not the best to be working with. What I mean by that is that they're the cheapest that I can find, and they really work if you're doing substrate blocks that are 5 pounds, no more than that, maybe 6 at the most. So if you're a hobbyist mushroom grower, they're a great avenue to go to. I have since then switched back up to Paul Stamets Fungi Perfecti substrate bags, and these are kind of top-ish line, if not just top line. The reason why I say that, number one, they are longer than your regular one. That seal right there, I think it's a 0.3 micron or 0.2 micron, so they're the best that you can get. And on top of that, the bag itself, you can just feel it, especially when you've worked with something like the Field and Forest product. It is heavy duty, so I can beat this thing to death and not worry about it really breaking open while I'm doing so. The other bags, I was always being very dainty with it, and as a result, my concern was that they didn't get, well, the grain spawn didn't get fully spread around the bag, and hence the reason why I've got, you know, splotchy colonization going on. The other thing, I got rid of my first impulse sealer and upgraded, or at least so I thought, to this impulse sealer right here. The big problem I had with the previous one is that the seal strip right here on the first one was it 2 millimeters, something like that? So it was very thin, and it often led to this tearing. This is 5 millimeters, so it's pretty much a standard in the industry. I got it off of Amazon. It's Linsenfield. I want to say I spent $99.99 on it, and I will tell you right now, I am not impressed. This thing, I'm having to seal 3, 4, 5 times. Sometimes it doesn't seal at all. The next thing I know is that it seals too much. And what I'm finding is that this is supposed to be 12-inch seal strip. It's not heating consistently across the entire strip. This point is always the hottest, and all over here varies each time you bring this down. So I'm going to do another batch tomorrow, and then inoculate on Sunday. So if this thing if I haven't kind of figured out what's going on with this thing, you know, I'm putting it back in the box and I'm sending it back, and I'm just going to go ahead and get the tool from Fungi Perfecti, because the one in Fungi Perfecti is about $150. This one is $100. At this point, I mean, I need to just bite the bullet, buy quality, so I don't have to consistently worry about these seals not working properly and, you know, shit breaking down or having problems with just, you know, fungus or foreign bacteria, some sort of contamination occurring. Okay, so just did 10 bags, 5 lion's mane, 5 king oyster with the new recipe, utilizing the new bags that I got from Fungi Perfecti, as well as the new impulse sealer. And all things considered, cautiously optimistic right now. Gotta say, I was pissed off with that impulse sealer, but it does seal. So, yeah, if you're getting a sealer, make sure that it has 5 millimeter seal range versus like 2 or 3. It will do you good. The bags, all in all, looked pretty good. The 2 ones with the tears or the stretches, all in all, mixed really well. And I gotta say also, having the extra space and a more durable bag really makes me much more comfortable mixing a little bit more aggressively. Get the grain spawn fully incorporated into those substrate blocks and see what happens. So obviously it's going to be a little while before I can update on this, but what I will do is wait and see how they do, give you an idea at the 10-day marker, maybe 15-day marker, go from there. In the meantime, thanks for sticking with me. Hope to see you soon.